Oh.
The first thing is I've completely converted over to Greatest Hits Radio because it's far better than BBC now. Right, got it. Good.
I can't even get my radio to work.
Oh, Anne, nobody asked your opinion, okay? Right, Anne. Give me a bit of archaeological news while you're at it.
Oh, I haven't had time to think.
Have you ever signed into that? Have you ever signed into sort of play that make me a winner thingamajig?
Oh, somebody, I was looking on Newport history, history of Newport, and someone was asking, are there any plague pits in Newport, and where would they be?
From what plague? The one that broke out in the 1660s, or the one that broke out in the 1340s?
Well, there you are. There'd be two.
Or the 1990s.
Oh, what the fictitious plague? Yeah, that one.
Well,
okay.
I was thinking. I think they did have. I think there was some plague pits up at St Willis Cathedral, because that's where the
you
burial.
can think, Anne. You can think, but where's your evidence, babe?
Pardon?
Where's your evidence, man?
Oh, well, I remember they were widening the road and they had to, dig up a load of graves. And
yeah, but they were graves.
They were all scared that they were contaminated with plague. No, sorry. Can I just say one thing, right? In the when the reason why there was so much cholera and so many diseases around in the Victorian period, was they were digging through graveyards that were contaminated. Yes. This is why there were new outbreaks in the end of the 1840s, 1850s. This is why everything was all over the place. Right. Okay. Next, Richard. Anything you'd like to tell us today, other than that I look really handsome, as I know, and you're really jealous of my hair?
I was just wondering how high the winds were down there. Looking at your hair.
Well, I've just been out. Right. I've been lying in sheep shit to try and do some of the flooring with the house here. So that's been quite fun. Right. My hair makes me look like John McEnroe from another dimension. Other than that, Richard, you haven't got anything useful to give us today, then?
No,
just keep going, is it, Rich?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good of you. I really appreciate that, Richard. I'm glad I got your permission. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Right, who's next? Right, Henry.
Hello.
Can you stop? Right, can you stop sending me stuff about bloody Ireland? I'm doing Ireland again this week.
I'm gonna take you somewhere different now. You need to look up the Jerusalem Post.
Oh.
Right. Can you just send me the link?
Right, Jerusalem Post.
So, they found a 6,000-year-old fishing hook made of copper in the bottom of an excavation.
Oh my God! Can you just stop a minute? They found a book made of copper.
Yes.
And you know what? Right. What was it? The Mormons in America, they found copper books from the Holy Land, right? And people thought they were fake, and now you've proved it that they were the genuine item. Thanks a lot for that. You've ruined history by giving us a fact.
There you are.
Well, thanks for that. You just ruined the lecture completely. I really appreciate you doing this every week. Right, who's next? Goff. Anything you'd like to tell us, Goff?
No archaeological news now. No, I very little.
Well, that's fair enough, isn't it? You know what I mean? Right. Okay, who's next? Let's have the splitter, Adam, who's decided that he's going to permanently be in this class every week because he doesn't like the others. Adam, you know what happened yesterday, right?
Well,
one of the Peters was renamed Adam because you weren't there, because it made it easier to do the class.
was it the other bearded one?
Yeah, the bearded Peter. Yeah,
Yes, yeah. No, that's fair enough.
not the
That's
other,
fine.
not the slaphead, but the bearded one.
That's fine. No worries.
Right, anything, right, go on, share and care. Give us some love.
I'm sure it's not news to you or anyone here, but I've just come across the Cockner Stone, the Cockner Stone in Scotland. It's like it looks like a star map on the.
Ah, nice. We love it.
Oh
Yeah.
man, that is interesting. Don't know if you've covered that, but I'd like to know your opinion on that. It's just it looks incredible to me.
We haven't done the Neolithic star map yet, but obviously that will be one thing that we do amongst everything else that we do in the Neolithic period. We will do it.
Nice.
So what we are going to do, we got an archaeological fest tonight. It's not all necessarily Neolithic or Bronze Age. We've actually got some Roman stuff tonight. So I've just got to make sure they got everything ready in front of me. So right, okay. We've got to go over to Ireland, and we've got to look at another Neolithic Irish site. We've got some really good illustrations for that at a place called Clooney Road in Londonderry. So we're going to be looking at that. Paul O'Grady. Oh no, we're not doing Paul O'Grady, but rest in peace. We're going to be doing a little bit about White Horse Hill in Dartmoor. So we're going to be doing that, and we've got the Barrow diggers here. And also, if I can make sure I get this right on the screen, yesterday we had a mosaic that had been found, and then I found another one. That were basically what we did. So if I could share this first one, we've got the one in Milton Keynes at a place called Olney. And then what we're going to do, I don't think I've got the other one geared up. Hang on a minute. I'm just going to make sure if it's left over from yesterday. Oh, yeah, the other one's there. Alongside the bestiality sites I looked at last night, but we don't talk about that. Right, okay. So let's just get straight on. I'll let you know the pages that I looked at last night, okay, Adam? So, right, okay, what are we doing? Right.
Trying to corrupt people.
Well, no, Adam's already corrupted. Adam's decided he's going to come down and stay a week with me in West Wales. He's going to be in a right.
Well, that should be fun.
Yeah, he's going to be in a right state after that. Apparently, he's prepared to sleep with a sheep.
No, you haven't got a pig.
I said sheep.
Oh, geese. Oh.
No, no. Oh, God. I said sheep.
Oh, sheep. Oh, they won't sleep. All right, that's all right. That's all right.
And do you want to move to the other class? Because it makes things a lot easier on a Wednesday. Tuesday would be an absolute nightmare. Right, okay. So yesterday I hadn't heard about this. I hadn't heard about this at all, right? Basically, Pat come on, she said a Roman mosaic has been found outside a vape shop. And I'm thinking, right, she's finally lost the plot. However, there it is. And there's actually more of it. A stunning mosaic found outside a vape shop in Colchester.
Yeah. Well,
now, I don't know if any of you took part with my Colchester trip, right? And when we did the Colchester trip.
No.
Okay, shut up. When we did the Colchester trip, right, we obviously saw the Roman wall around Colchester. We saw St. Bossoff's Priory, which was made out of Roman stone. We saw where the theatre was, and there's a shop where you can see the theatre. There's obviously the castle where you can go into the basement where the original temple of Claudius. You can see that. You can see the Barbican Gate as well, we're all in Colchester and a few other bits and pieces. But other than that, there's not really a massive lot in Colchester, considering Camel and Junum it's debatable whether it was the biggest or the second biggest Roman location, Roman vicus, Roman town, Roman city in the whole of Romanized Britain. And there's not as much on display as say if you go to York. However, they are going to put this on display. It's amazing, amazing story about this. So there's more than just that. So workers started to unearth a Roman mosaic buried under a pavement outside a vape shop. The ornate design was originally discovered in 1980, but they backfilled it. However, they've now uncovered it, and a project to permanently uncover the mosaic at Red Lion Yard and display it beneath glass is now underway and due to be completed by the end of this summer. So we'll be able to see a mosaic underneath your feet. So it's actually more than what we've just seen. Martin Leatherdale, centre manager of the Lion Walk Shopping Centre, said that displaying the tile art would help promote the city's Roman heritage, and I completely agree. And Colchester City, Colchester Archaeological Trust has been excavating there. We've uncovered what's already been found, and we're also exploring further than that. The amount of traffic and inquiries and engagement that it gets is just off the scale. I've never seen anything like it. There's definitely an appetite out there for it. And look, there's more Roman stuff, right? So when you go to Colchester next, after you've seen people injecting heroin on the streets and offering you heroin and marijuana and all the bloody rest of it, you then get to this, because that actually happened on the trip, right? One of the group was stupid enough to smoke one of the joints, but that's what happens on the old excursions. But when you've passed all those people, you get to see this mosaic now in the shopping centre, and it's going to be absolutely well worth it. I won't be going back to Colchester. I'll be sending one of you guys to take a photograph of me, but that's your next trip, Henry. Job done. Henry, you'll be flying home. So fully understand how much remain of the mosaic underground. Excellent stuff. Moisture content of the ground, which needs to be scientifically considered before encapsulating. But they do this type of thing on the continent. It is about time that we really upped it and did more of this in Britain. Showing our archaeology, 40 mosaics have been uncovered across Colchester over the past 2 centuries. And this will be one of the only ones that is actually on display in Colchester, which is absolutely brilliant. I'm loving it. But unfortunately, because I can't do any more about this, because today my trousers were pulled down around my ankles and another one was found. Mosaics, they're every bloody where. Do you know what? I was going to write a book on Roman remains in Britain. I'm so bloody glad I didn't, because it would have been out of date. It's out of date. It's gone. We're not. By the way, Adam's not interested in the Romans, and according to Adam, the Romans never ever came to Britain. But that's something else. Sorry, Adam, I'm just winding you up. Roman mosaic uncovered in southeastern England, and look at that. Look at the galosh pattern. That's called galosh pattern, right? You've got this nice sort of. You've got this huge border on it, which is actually typical. This probably dates it to roughly around 150 to 200 years AD. And this is probably influenced by maybe the school of mosaic makers from Londinium, because the galosh pattern is slightly different from the Cirencester Corinium galosh pattern. And that there is called galosh pattern, right? So obviously, we're loving this. I don't know what the fate of this is going to be. I don't know. And if this is being found on part of a housing estate. So here we go. It's from Olney. The red, white and blue tiles are thought to have been part of a villa and bathhouse. Much of what may remain of the structure is thought to be under a local road. However, due to the site location, we anticipated some notable Roman remains. But the discovery of this fantastic mosaic far exceeded those expectations of Oxford archaeology. What a posh name. John Boothroyd. It's not as posh as Karl-James Langford. The mosaic will be recorded, covered and protected in situ so that construction can continue. Now, I'm just a bit thingy. I would have. We've got the technology now to have this on display. However, by not destroying it, by putting a membrane on it, by sort of making sure we know it is there, maybe putting a road over it and so on to protect it for future generations, that might be the best thing to do at this stage. So what we're going to do, Adam, straight down to your undies, Adam, and we're going to get straight into the lecture proper. And here we go. Oh, by the way, Adam, are you there, Adam?
Yellow.
Right, Adam, right. You know, I'm looking for an April Fool's gang to do, right? Do you think that finding King Arthur in a hole in the ground in West Wales is going to upset people?
Yeah, it'll probably upset the right people to upset.
All right, that's it. I'll do it then.
Let's do it.
Good. Let's do it. Oh, sorry. Last night we were doing. We had the football game, which Adam was watching. He's a supporter of Latvia, but Adam, your team lost 1-0. Right, there you go. We're going to do Bateman today. Bateman, spelt wrong there. It should be an A. But we found 9 of these lead tablets where he was digging his barrows. Now, who would have thought rats and voles were fascinating? But they bloody well are. And this is part 6 or 7. I don't know. One of yesterday's video said part 7, and today's video is part 6. So when anyone's researching this on the internet, they'll get 6 and 7, which are exactly the same. But don't worry about it. Now, the other week we looked at Thomas Bateman, who was the son of William Bateman, who was then the son of Thomas Bateman. Now, Thomas Bateman lived between 1841 and 1861, 40 years of digging. No, he wasn't. He was only digging for about 20 years. And what he did, he had his dad's old estate when his dad died. And the estate itself meant that Bateman could go out and he could dig holes everywhere. Bateman only lived 40 years, which is a big shame. Bateman is thought to be one of the fathers of archaeology. He made a few balls-ups, but then again, I've made a few balls-ups as well. We all make balls-ups as archaeologists. Bateman gives us a method in archaeology that isn't used today to detect human burials in the ground. And we're going to give that to you today. A little clue to that is a Time Team episode. Can anyone ever remember that Time Team episode from the 1990s? We had 4 people watching online a minute ago. Now there's only 1. I don't know why. There was a Time Team episode in the 1990s, right? It was based in Scotland. And basically, when they lifted up the huge stone slab of a Bronze Age chamber, they found a human skull with all the frontal stuff of the skull gone, right? And they found out that there was bits of plastic in it and bits of all sorts of things in there, right? The rats have been using the skull as a nest, and obviously that came to me, and it's the only real time that I've heard of rats being mentioned in archaeology. The other time I've heard rats being mentioned in archaeology is Cadw. Oh, jokes aside, the other time that I've heard rats being mentioned in archaeology is when they excavated the remains of Barcladia the Garrus on Anglesey. And they said that they'd found rat's bones and toad bones, statues of Lloyd George in a cauldron. They said it was all mixed together. And the archaeologist said it was put together as a brew. I looked at the evidence and I started to think, what if a little toad crawled in there and died? And what if a little rat crawled in there and died, right? Instead of being mixed up as a witch's potion or a brew up Barcladia the Garrus. Now, Bateman had this theory about rats and voles. Voles of all little creatures, little buggers. Bateman often mentioned the presence of animal bones in his cans, sometimes with the bodies, sometimes in the mound material itself. He reckons, and his theory is quite sound, that the remains of voles and rats indicated that there was human remains nearby. Drum roll, please. Or somebody online, Gran88, said, this is fascinating. Thanks, Gran. Among the most singular and interesting animal bones were those of rats. The remains of water voles found in profusion in many of his sites, often in close proximity to internments. Now, one of the things I will say in regards to archaeology is that archaeologists seldom, in the main, mention animal bones, certainly not rat bones, and certainly not vole bones. And now, these vole bones may have been found associated with a barrow like this, or rat bones may have been associated with a barrow like this. These vole bones do not occur regularly in barrows in any other areas of Britain other than Derbyshire and maybe Sheffield and Yorkshire. Mainly Derbyshire, where Bateman was excavating. Sometimes their position are unspecified at other times. Definitive relationships were observed. At Briar Low, now this isn't, hang on a minute, I've just got to make sure that which barrow we're actually looking at here. This is Below, not Briar Low, but a similar barrow to this. At Briar Low and other sites, human remains had been apparently badly gnawed by the rodents. At other cairns, such as Eldon Hill, Musden Hill, and Bitchin Hill, skeletons were embedded and covered in water vole bones. Now, it makes perfect sense to find these little critters in amongst human bones. And a reason why, if you think about a rib cage, you've got a space to shelter it under. If you've got a human skull, perfect for a nest. If the marrow's gone in long bones, right, you might be able to use that for something or whatever, right? So human remains and the cavities that human remains are buried in make perfect homes, not for just rats and voles, but wabbits and hares and other wonderful creatures. Now, yet some cairns surprisingly yielded no rodent remains. Interesting. In others, certain interments were accompanied by vole bones, others were not. Bateman's evidence shows that in some cairns, masses of rodent bones were available on site on the funeral day. At Musden Hill, water vole remains were blackened by smoke from a nearby cremation fire. At Blackstone Low, have you noticed this word low is quite synonymous with Derbyshire when we got Arborough, sometimes spelled with an E on the end? Rodent bones occurred with a cremation in a cinerary urn. All the bones were calcified. In other words, they had been sort of heated, or they may have actually been part of the, or they may have actually been burnt in some way, right? Now, the one thing that we will say is that bones of these wonderful little mammals occur because they live in amongst the human remains. Now, we've got a message online quickly. Oh, right. Somebody's just mentioned a thing online, but we'll come on to that later. One other suggestion is that cairns under construction are left open for a considerable period of time could have provided places on which owls or other predatory birds disgorged or dismembered their prey. So in other words, we got vole and rat bones there for reasons that they may have been associated with a cremation, reasons that they may have been associated with the burial, reasons that they may have lived there by accident, reasons that they may have been there because they were eaten away by predatory birds. But naturally, these are massively important and massively fascinating, you know. So one of the things I think what we're talking about is wonderful, a wonderful sort of identifier of where we might be able to find human bones in some circumstances. You know what? In archaeology, we've got different techniques for understanding the ground, right? Now, I'm going to go off on a tangent, a little bit of a tangent, right? And the tangent is that when I was directing an excavation at Flemington in the Vale of Glamorgan not so many years ago near St. Athan, we were excavating the remains of a Tudor building, right? And I thought, right, the wall alignment is in that direction, right? And I thought, right, in the next foot we're going to find the wall. We didn't. We found medieval pottery. And I was saying, I was looking at everyone saying, we're finding medieval pottery, right? The soil color was completely different, so we're finding medieval pottery. And the big reason why we were finding medieval pottery, my friends, is quite simple. A few years ago, what happened was that somebody wanted to level the landscape where where this Tudor manor was. And when they were leveling the landscape, they decided to take soil from a medieval site nearby. So what they did, they scooped out all this medieval material, spread it across the site. And we know that because as I basically told everybody, right, now we've got to work through this supposed pseudo-medieval layer. And guess what we found underneath? Tudor walls in perfect preservation and a Tudor cobbled floor as well. So in other words, you get archaeology which has been mucked around with. And, you know, we've got to look for these time signs. You've got to be able to understand the archaeology. What's that got to do with voles? Archaeologists have got various different techniques to understand the archaeology that they're excavating. You know, and this is very, very important to remember those types of techniques. It's said as well, it's really interesting that when Bateman was working in Derbyshire, most of his sites were mainly early Bronze Age and of Bronze Age date. And what he found was that there was, in any remains that he was excavating associated with the Bronze Age, there was a predominant rise in evidence of water vole bones. When he excavated on Neolithic sites, he really didn't find many water vole bones. When he excavated on Roman sites, he didn't find any water vole bones and any evidence after that. And there's two things that can be learned from this, three actually. Archaeology, you can learn a lot from archaeology, right? I'll just change the image so we've got a different image there. You can learn a lot from archaeology. And what you can learn from archaeology, well, you've got to understand the past one, right? Archaeology helps us to understand that this whole thing at this minute, that global warming has been caused by human interference, is an absolute load of nonsense, because and Neil Oliver agrees with me on that one. When we look at the past in the Bronze Age, the temperature, for example, was sometimes 2, maybe 1.5, maybe up to 2.5 degrees higher than it is today. Up until the year oh God, I had it in my head then. Hang on a minute. Up until I had it in my head, it's gone. Oh yeah, I've got it. 1628 BC, when the eruption of Theia occurred, then temperature in the northern hemisphere dropped because the eruption and the cloud, and from that moment onwards, the Bronze Age crashed in Britain. The population in the Bronze Age of maybe up to 2.5–3 million people crashed because there was a collapse in climate, natural climate change. And then what we also learned from this evidence that Bateman's actually given us is the massive point that that when we get animal extinctions, in many cases, they're not because of human interference, right? And the reason why I'm saying that is that at these Bronze Age sites, he was coming across thousands and thousands of vole bones inside closed up burial chambers. So that means that the voles were living there quite happily. Humans couldn't get to them. Humans couldn't eat them, right? So therefore, the climate collapse, the natural climate collapse, caused a drop in temperature. The natural climate collapse caused the extinction of, for example, water voles. I'm not denying, for example, that human beings are wiping out tropical rainforests and wiping out thousands of species of animals on the planet. But personally, it's my view that humans are not responsible for climate temperature change. I will be burnt in hell for saying that. Anyway, we've got actually 6 people online, which is great. So one thing I will say, one thing, perhaps in the early part of the Bronze Age, there was a real abundance of rodents in Derbyshire. Not in other parts of the country, but he was recording these rodent bones lasting long enough after that time to form deposits of large number of bones in these Bronze Age barrows. And then the rat phenomenon is also similar. The rat phenomenon was also remarked on by subsequent Peak District diggers like Jewett, like Bagshaw and Pennington, typical Derbyshire names. So, and also the author of these notes that I'm giving you today, Barry Marsden, also noticed that there is a considerable presence of vole and rat bones at the cairns that he's excavated in Derbyshire as well. It's very, very odd. It's very, very odd that that archaeologists have missed these rat bones and these vole bones. I've never come across this phenomenon in any other context in archaeology. I don't know Adam or Anne or Henry or Goff or Richard, you've ever come across rat or vole bones in any of your reading associated with human remains. I would like to know, because I haven't, and I've been involved in archaeology for decades. However, Bateman was recording them. And the reason why that might be, right, I've come across archaeologists who I've worked with. When you come across animal bones, they're just discarded. Lots of archaeologists do not record animal bones. I will give you an example, right? And this is me in another context. Whenever I've gone field walking with my students, I've said never collect animal bones or never collect human bones, because animal and human bones, you cannot use them for dating in the middle of a field when you're picking up artifacts from a plowed field. However, on my excavations, we've got bags and bags and bags of animal bones of all sorts. On one excavation, I got people to excavate a sheep that turned out that the sheep had only died about 30 years earlier. But it was a good exercise for my students to be doing, looking at animal bones. Animal bones are massive and fascinating in context. I don't suggest collect animal bones and human bones up out of context on the surface of the ground when you're field walking. However, make a record of these animal bones within burial chambers, as these people are doing in the 17, 18 and early 1900s. One person said, agree with you, suppose I'll burn alongside you. The idea about global environmental change. Anyway, Bateman and Carrington regarded their occurrence during digging as an almost infallible indication that inhumation burials were close by. The other person who worked with Isaacson was the one who was responsible for the Barrow night work in 1845. Isaacson agreed with Bateman, and obviously he worked alongside Bateman. Isaacson said this: intent to find the bones of rats, for these afford a certain trail which low explorers never fail. Obviously, Low is another name for barrows in Derbyshire, if you haven't already worked out that. Arbor Low, right? Or most of these sites have got the name Low associated with them. And Anne, your surname is Lowe.
Yes.
But that's your husband's name, not yours. So
Yes.
can we just go back and just sort of give a little bit of explanation for these images, right?
It's
Now,
French.
this is
French.
Low.
Yeah.
It can't be. It's from Derbyshire.
It's French for lion. Anyway,
As in,
you know,
as
if
in
you want to
fruit.
be fancy.
Oh, bloody hell. In Derbyshire, they would agree with you, Anne. There's nothing wrong with a bit of a disagreement. Plan of the Below. This is a Below. Below, forever low. There's animal bones there. He's recorded animal bones. Who records animal bones? Or, I forgot Reverend Buckland with his excavation at Pavlan Cave on the Gower in 1823. Unfortunately, brought the mammoth skull back to his laboratory in Oxford, and it was on his desk, and it disappeared the next day because he felt that it fell off his desk and he couldn't find it. His Reverend Buckland, his descriptions of animal bones weren't great. Shut up, Anne. Planet of Below Khan. And this was published in the work of 10 Years Digging by Bateman. Bateman's woodcuts were mainly the work of Llewellyn Hewitt, right? Right, but obviously this was based on Bateman's sketches, Thomas Bateman. So these become woodcuts in his books, were well in advance of other Barrow drawings in contemporary books. But note the large undug area. But then again, what's wrong with the undug area? Today, archaeologists would suggest that you leave an undug area. Don't dig it all, Goff. You never know what you might find in your garden. Don't dig it all, because future generations can come along and either agree or disagree your work. We know that Bateman was there because he left one of his plaques there. Bateman spelt with an E, not an A. He spelled his name wrong on his little plaques, but you know, I think he had probably dyslexia. But anyway, so this itself was, the rest of it was excavated by Barry Marsden in 1966 to 1968. Now, one of the things that we will say about this is it's actually very, very detailed. People argue, for example, that, you know, this isn't, you know, that there's a little beaker there. He's got a little beaker, right? So a Bronze Age beaker. So you've got a little beaker there, right? You've got the stones, these little kists inside the barrow, right? You've got other human remains. Can you see the way these human remains are organized? They're organized differently, which would be different stages of internment. Those are just a load of long bones, right? And I'm not sure whether that's indicating a skull or it's indicating pottery. Oh, let's go with the skull on that. Maybe it's not. But you can see the different ways that these are actually interred at below. Put the E on the end there, but it hasn't got the E on that one. Isaacson, in his own notes, refers to Low, L-O-W-E. Anyway.
Oh.
So exactly, Anne. Maybe, Anne. Maybe. You know, I'm always right, Anne. What? Are you there?
I do know a bit of my history, my husband's history.
But there is one thing, Anne, right? Derbyshire. Your husband come from up that way. Why
Lancashire.
Yeah, why? Well, it's the same as Derbyshire, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, they would hate me for saying that. I know they're bad. But, you know, when you think about it, you're saying that your surname comes from France, but there's a prevalence to the word "low" being used in Derbyshire. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean that's you know, that's more modern. That's all. More modern, you know, use of it.
Exactly. Low mound, low mound, low mound. There you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, Anne, the key and the one thing that, oh right, we've got to tell you this next story. This is yeah, we'll come back to this plan, maybe, right? But what I'll say is really detailed. 3 different types of internment: inhumation internment, not flexed, crouched. This is actually long bones, so this would indicate maybe an earlier burial, right, when just the long bones were collected from sky burial. And that would be some kind of maybe an offering, or maybe they had an animal that needed burying. I don't bloody know. But there's 3 different ways of interring here, and I think that's absolutely fascinating. But what we got to do, we got to go to the shenanigans. Now, it's said that this was a humorous incident in Bateman's accounts. I don't think it's bloody humorous when I tell you this, right? There's 4 labourers there. And look at it, look at that slightly out of perspective, to be honest with you, right? What that should look like is similar to this, but the space underneath is higher. So when we do the description, you'll note what there is on the top, and then what happened when something happened here. In 1848, this is Gib Hill Cairn, Bateman's excavation party attacking the huge Gib Hill. The tunnel shown in the sketch later fell in, revealing a kist set high up in the mound. But something happened before that, folks. There's a warning on this. Don't dig a burial chamber in the way that Bateman dug it that day. The excavation there lasted 7 days, which is a nice record for the time. So large was the mound that a tunnel was driven into its side. There's the tunnel. A sketch in Illustrations of Antiquity shows this tunnel supported by timbering. So far, so good, folks. When no internment came to light, the supports were knocked away in preparation to filling in, right? Can we just stop that, right? They took away the supports before they filled in the hole, right? You know what happened next, don't you? The weight of the stonework above, the roof of the tunnel immediately collapsed, bringing down two orthostats, which are upright stones, of a large limestone kist, which would have been similar to this, but slightly different, right? So if you can think of that on top, right? Basically, there was two layers to this cairn, and my French, Bateman screwed it up. I've tried to find deaths in archaeology, right? You know, but very macabre sort of sense of humor sometimes. They were so reckless in the way they did work back then, that, you know, you're just thinking, well, this is absolute mad. Can you imagine, right? Anne, did somebody say once in one of my classes that you might be an intelligent archaeologist, Carl, but you got no common sense?
Oh, probably, yes.
That was Bill. That was Bill, quoting Bill, right?
Oh, yes. Well, he's an
Bill.
engineer.
Yeah. So basically, in
No
other
sense of
words,
humour.
this would have been very similar to this, which is a Ballington Moor, right? A food vessel, which is that above, which looks like a cremation vessel, from inside the kist also fell into the tunnel. Fortunately, no one was injured in this collapse of the internal part of the mound. I'm thinking this is absolute nuts. So reckless. Mind you, I told you that story last week about me going into a tunnel, didn't I?
No. Oh,
The one where I went into a tunnel and I undid the safety rope, which was around my waist.
Yes.
Yeah. Goff gets the full thing there, that we're completely reckless. We've got no bloody common sense. So the one thing, what we've got to do now, we haven't got many images today, but what we do have, we're going to go to that in a minute. There we go. This is Bateman's little study. Christ almighty, you've got enough in there to create a small museum. Do you know what I used to like? I used to like taking my Ruba Tuber down in his little pushchair down to Horsham Museum. And Horsham Museum was like this.
oh gosh. It's a bit like Pitt Rivers.
Yeah, a bit like Pitt Rivers. I think they've sort of got rid of the sunken heads at this minute, you know, which was apparently not woke. Describing a skull found by his father at Kenslow, Bateman's father, William, perhaps influenced by the growing interest in phrenology, which is the study of skulls, remarked following Dr. Hibbert's report that it exhibited phrenological developments indicative of some of the worst passions in incidents to human nature. So they're looking at skulls, they're judging these skulls when they may have actually been gnawed away by rats.
Yeah.
Or communists, same difference. This opinion of the unfortunate long dead individual leads us to regret that modern anatomical reports are not so entertaining. So in other words, when people are writing reports, they're looking at skulls, look at that there. Imagine going there, you've got the long bones underneath and you've got a collection of skulls. Look at that little one there. It's tiny, isn't it? Cute. So, but they actually studied these skulls, right? And basically, phrenology was something that the Anna Nurbe, which was established on the 1st of July 1935 by Heinrich Himmler of all people. The Anna Nurbe was the German archaeological SS, and they had a department of people that would go around measuring human skulls. And this takes us back to that. But this is Bateman measuring human skulls for another reason, or is he? And whilst we're at it, right, I want to do this point that we did at the end of the lecture yesterday. And I'm going to do it now because this is more relevant to do this now. Bateman found difficulty in breaking down the chronology of the burials he disinterred. but he was well aware of the Stone Age and the Iron Age. He was well aware that the Stone Age come before any metals, which was a great help. However, because of his father came up with a theory that long-headed skulls came from chambered cairns, which would be from the Neolithic period, and broad-headed skulls would come from round cairns, stone cairns. And then the other theory was that rounded skulls came from round barrows, and apparently they proved that as a theory, which I think is absolute bonkers beyond belief. But most of those skulls are either I don't know, but it would really isn't that interesting that I don't really know if we can go with that theory at all. But you know, and here we go. He assigned the chambered cairns and the peak to the most remote antiquity, when the sole material for the spear and arrow was flint. Round cairns with a short round form of skull were correctly placed in a later era. So in other words, what we're saying, this is really interesting. It's really difficult to work out the wording there, but what we're saying, he realized two things there. The first thing, that stone artifacts, lots of stone artifacts, if we look at the seriation method of Flinders Petrie years later, the use of stone on a mass scale came before the use of metals. So he was right about that, right? He could see this, that the earlier chambers with no metal were earlier than the ones with metal, right? So he worked that one out. The other thing as well is, he did say that the people with the rounded skulls basically came from the period of metal workers, and he was right. The shape of the barrows, the rounded barrows, came from the Bronze Age. Whether he's right completely about the skulls, that's for another day, which we're not going to do. Bateman regarded the cairn builders as living centuries, perhaps tens of centuries, before the lust of conquest tempted the Roman legions across the Channel. He didn't go any further, but I believe that if he'd lived 10 more years, he could have given us a full understanding of some of the areas of prehistory before the Roman period. And interesting enough, what we're going to do, we're going to show his sarcophagus now quickly. We're going to go to the end of Bateman, then we'll come back into him. Like, Bateman was laid to rest on a hillside at Middleton, behind the chapel built by his grandfather Thomas in 1827, among his beloved Derbyshire dales. It seems fitting that his mausoleum, surrounded by an iron rail, is surmounted by a stone replica of an early Bronze Age cremation urn. And that is very similar if we sort of try and maybe look at it like that.
Yeah.
That really is what was recreated, associated with his mausoleum in Derbyshire. And Anne's going to say it, so I am, because we're going to go back to the images again. We're going to go back to this one. Anne's going to say it. If we think about lots of the wonderful poetic writers like Coleridge, and we think about Shelley, and then we think of Byron going up north as well, they're influenced by this very dark, bleak landscape of Derbyshire and Yorkshire.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wanted to sort of mention that anatomical thing, right? I wanted to sort of look at that and think about that. And what I wanted us to put in as well is we've been upping some of the glories of Bateman, but we need to look at some of his mistakes as well. I can't not do this as a British archaeologist and not look at somebody's mistakes, you know. It's got to be done. However, what we've got to do is work how Bateman actually learned from his mistakes. On Burton Moor, 3 skeletons were exhumed by undercutting the mound immediately below the junction of 3 field walls. Very dangerous. Bateman again relied on candle power at Rusden Low, where a grave was found at dusk. Owing to the lateness of the hour at which this interment was found, he wrote, we were obliged to clear out the grave by candlelight. And obviously you can imagine, I've worked in candlelight on a candlelight on archaeological sites, and it's no fun, right? So mistakes can be made, but if you've got cameras with flashes, we've got a bit of an advantage with that. And the illumination provided by this method of lighting must, one feels, have been somewhat inadequate to say the least, but he had no choice. And the reason why he had no choice, people in Derbyshire watched his work. And if he didn't remove everything from the burial that he was working in, it would be stolen by the local people. Everyone was into this, one of the excavations, while most of the excavations were planned affairs, as we basically said with the likes of Below, and we've mentioned Gib Hill, where they excavated for 7 days and so on. He describes one casual dig when a stone circle Daltor was discovered during a stroll near Stanton Moor. Now, we will be doing Stanton Moor in the near future, but obviously not today, and causewayed enclosures. If I don't mention them today, I just thought I'd put that in the mix. The small party borrowed tools from the nearby farm and hacked out the centre of the site. So they weren't always brilliant in their workings, but and they also worked in Staffordshire as well. Staffordshire, basically what it was, Bateman didn't work in all these counties, right? And I would say that from somebody who's got literally six large-scale reports to get published before I die, which I'm going to be starting on very soon, and I'm going to need a bit of help with that, Adam. And anyone else who wants to help. In my lifetime, I've probably excavated on probably about 25 archaeological sites, right? And Bateman was dead before the age I am now, right? And he excavated on hundreds of sites. But there was a different way of looking at archaeology back then. So Bateman had lieutenants who didn't have likewise drawing rooms like this full of artifacts. He had several lieutenants, and one was a bit of a complete arse, and another one, the one we're going to mention, Samuel Carrington, between 1798 and 1870. He was Bateman's lieutenant in Staffordshire. Basically, Carrington would excavate and give descriptions of work that he was doing and send the artifacts to Bateman to publish in his work 10 Years Digging and so on. A village school master was Samuel Carrington, a smallholder at Wetton, very similar to me. He would, but I'm not a school. Well, I'm a schoolmaster, and I'm a smallholder. Interesting. He was described by Roach Smith as a very intelligent man. Can't fault it, Anne. A good geologist and an enthusiastic excavator of tumuli. Not that I've only excavated one tumuli in my life. He noted, this Roach Smith noted, seldom are such men appreciated, and I fear he was not an exception to the fate of the worthy, unselfish poor. So in other words, he was somebody who was very talented, but not really sort of understood for the work that he did. Carrington appears to have begun working with Bateman in the spring of 1845, whether it was directly or in his beloved Staffordshire. Some useful information on his operations appears in the large manuscript volume in his neat handwriting, once in the Bateman collection and now in the Derby Reference Library. So in other words, lots of the work of these early diggers is sort of spread around, right? It's sort of spread around within sort of Sheffield and Derbyshire and so on. The body of the volume is taken up by a play on Barrow digging, almost certainly inspired by the works of Isaacson and others. And interestingly enough, I know I said the other week, wouldn't it be great if I did one of my lost archaeological reports in a narrative, almost as if sort of, we were digging on a Sunday, there were people digging with us, we found this and that, blah, blah, blah. Somebody chucked a trowel and nearly killed someone, that type of thing, right? It'd make a report very, very interesting, right? And that's how they made some of the archaeological reports like back in the day. They put poetry in there, they put sort of various verse in there. And the facts of the archaeology they were working at, wonderful illustrations, and so on. One of these such works was the Barrow diggers' restitution of the lost archives of ancient Britain, also a defense of the noble science of barrow digging and archaeology in general. I have said that some of these early people were the fathers of British archaeology. Others weren't. They were great charlatans. But the play itself, written in 1851-1852, is a laboured and turgid work, but it contains some interesting observations and information. And basically, it was written with the fact that the main barrow digger was in fact Bateman, and Carrington and other people were the other barrow diggers in this play. It was written like a play. The first is obviously Bateman, and the second likened to lessers by like Carrington. The narrative contains some shrewd comments on digging, mainly gleaned from actual experience. So in other words, he gets very excited in this, but they're saying, look, this is how archaeology is. You know, this is what we're doing. You know, there are people watching our digs, and we bloody hate them, and they're asking us stupid questions. Have you found anything today? But one of the things about being an archaeologist is to try and get across to people the two different types of archaeologists. The one type of archaeologist being Bateman, and the other types of archaeologists actually doing the work themselves. I've unfortunately been the Bateman when I've done excavations. Everyone's working away, they're happy, we're having cups of tea, we're having chats, we're looking at the artifacts. Everyone goes home, and the one who has to deal with the stress of publishing, trying to deal with what's going on site, photographing, mapping, planning, doing some excavation work that hasn't been done properly, and all these other things, looking at the finds, looking after the finds and all the rest of it, is nibs. And it can be a very depressing, a very sort of onerous thing. And everybody else thinks archaeology is actually wonderful. Archaeology is only 10% excavation. 90% of it is actually the hard work of putting everything together, and then putting up with the criticism and crap that Bateman and the likes of myself have had to put up with all our lives. You know, everyone thinks that they're an archaeologist. Unfortunately, it would be like me saying, Goff, I can sail a ship. I'm good at sea. I'm not. I wouldn't have a clue, right? Goff can. Goff knows what he's doing, right? And there's so many people like prima donnas in archaeology. They think they're good archaeologists, and they're not. It is actually a science in itself. All this sort of narration, all this sort of play acting that I do in these lectures, trying to get you to learn and so on. There's a strong, powerful base behind it, and you guys wouldn't still be here if you weren't learning something. In this sort of narration that's coming across in 1852, Carrington noted that he had dug 135 cairns between spring 1845 and autumn 1852. Though this must include reopenings. Now that's interesting. When we've looked at the other barrow diggers and we've said, oh, they've dug 200 mounds, did they actually go back and dig some of the mounds that they'd originally dug? If they went back and dug a mound twice, that means that 3 of those 200 diggings are actually the same site, right? So some of this thing about we're digging hundreds of mounds is slightly over exaggerated. Among other things, it's remarked in this wonderful play, and obviously with this backdrop of this wonderful stuff behind us, love it. There's a little figure in that cabinet there, look at that, weird. Among other things, he remarks on the camp followers who come to observe the digs, and who are disposed to laugh at them for what they call following a queer business. Do you know, I tell you what, when I said to my parents I was going to do archaeology, they didn't have a clue. Definitely, we've got a queer son, definitely. Especially, and it goes on to say, especially one of his characters comments on the rewards of barrow digging by revealing they find nothing but bits of flint and rotten pitchers, pottery, all other scraps and the potter's fingernails. One of Carrington's truisms is worth quoting. This is good. This is Carrington. No one ought to open a barrow. There is not as many eyes as an Argus, and everyone wide awake. So in other words, archaeology is not just a game, it's a very serious affair. And they realized that in this period that we're talking about. It's in this period that we're starting to talk about the Society of Antiquaries being established, the Cambrians being established in the 1840s, which I'm now a member of after all these years. You know, all these, it's a very serious thing. And, you know, sometimes I come across, as I said, as not being serious, but is a serious thing. Although Bateman only records Carrington's excavations from the beginning of 1848, between that date and 1858, the latter dug into some 100 burial mounds, mostly in Staffordshire, not including numerous reopenings of tumuli previously explored by him. His work tailed off after 1851, probably because of the cairns in his area had been rifled in Staffordshire. The latter part of the Carrington manuscripts contains letters sent by him to Bateman, describing his work on Bateman's behalf and listing the costs included for labourers and a reoccurring item. And Anne, on the list of what you would pay for when you're paying diggers to dig on an archaeological site, what is one of the most important things that you've got to pay for?
Food?
Yes, close. Beer. Cups of tea.
Beer, is it?
Beer, top of the world, sir. Yeah, beer and ale. Whenever they pay people to work on archaeological sites, I like the sort of, you know, I like the sort of getting into people's minds and the people digging these things. But people who weren't necessarily interested in digging, who were the diggers, who were being paid to dig, not Bateman. It's significant to relate the cost for 2 men and a boy for 1 day was 3 shillings 3 pence. Now, that to me is a lot of money for 1 day's digging, right? But that involves food and ale.
Hmm.
For 1 man, a 5-hour stint paid is 1 shilling and a little beer. Evidently, now 1 shilling is a lot of money then. But Bateman had the money to pay people. I think probably a shilling for somebody to work is probably a week's money back then, at least. So, you know, working for these archaeologists, these archaeologists, they're full of bloody money. So just, you know, they'll pay you to do it. Evidently, Carrington paid small sums for flints found during digging, and 6 pence was given to some nameless individual for finding Barrow and getting leave. At Marhill, he had 3 men hard at work from noon till night, as well as one that assists of his own will. However, there's a downside. Sometimes they paid people by the artifact, and a piece of pottery is an artifact. And you'll know what's coming, won't you, Anne? Carrington also provided the original version of some work where excavators found an urn, and the excavators deliberately smashed it to bits and distributed the pieces. Now the diggers smashed it to bits because they could probably get more money per bit and not artifact. Other times, Carrington was the one doing the smashing of the artifacts and distributing the artifacts to the diggers as a mementos. Yeah, it's just really bizarre. It's like, but then, Anne, right, is that very much different from an example I'm going to give you, right? When they were excavating on the Mithras Temple in London, right, in 1956, before, and it was placed down the road, and now it's at the Bloomsburg site. It was moved back to the Bloomsburg site. So when you go into the Bloomsburg building in London, you can actually find the Mithras Temple at the exact location where it was originally found, right? But because they had to move it, they had a lot of artifacts, and basically, they were selling off the lamps, the original Roman lamps from the temple. There were so many of them, they sold them off to the tourists. Is that any different from what Carrington was doing? I don't think it is.
No, I think you gotta, you know, have Oh, it's PR, isn't it? You know, it's just keeping people on board. If you know, to get them to do it again, you know, the diggers.
I can't imagine. Can you imagine? Can you imagine a conversation, Anne? Right, the guy a guy gets paid 1 shilling and comes home completely pissed, right, with a pocket full of broken pottery, right. His wife shouts and screams at him, right? What's all this crap? You know, it's very odd that that the diggers were given bits of pottery. It's really, really odd indeed. Do you know what, Anne? Right, I used to subscribe to a magazine, right? And when I got this magazine one day, they were selling 2 mummified Egyptian fingers for £25 in a little wooden box. And my history teacher was kind of convinced me to get it so I could bring it into school in a week's time and show all the children I got 2 Egyptian mummified fingers. They probably turned out to be 2 fingers that had been cut off somebody who had recently died.
Oh God.
No, this happened. This happened. What they would do in ancient Egypt. No, what they were doing in the 1920s and 30s, right? They would because people used to have their loved ones in the garden, right? So when they were a bit short of money, they used to take the loved one's body out and they used to cut their hands off and their fingers, and they used to put them in boxes and sell them to tourists and make out that they were the remains of Egyptian mummies. And then it got so bad that when in Egypt, when they were running out of fuel, they opened one tomb and there was 1 million ibis birds mummified in this tomb. They burnt the lot for fuel.
Oh. I don't know what to say.
I know it's lost for words. Do you know what we might do is have a little break in a minute, but we'll do I eat my do I eat my tin of apricot halves yet with custard? No, I'll have it after the class. I'm looking forward to my custard and apricot halves.
What time is it?
Is that past 8?
That's what I thought.
Oh, we got some conversation online. We've got a Gran 88, we've got a Monsoir, we've got Elise. Oh, she sounds nice. Yeah, keep putting comments online. I know you're watching. Right, a last little bit, and we'll after this. Carrington names a certain Thomas Meacock of Waterfall. So I think that must be in Staffordshire, who dug on Carlton Hill, finding bones. Besides breaking up an urn with their hacks, the fragments of which were distributed among these rustic antiquaries, the colossal cairn at Steep Low, already mentioned by Isaacson in Barrow Night in 1845, was dug into from time to time, but its very size foiled Carrington's attempts. At length, he determined on a full-scale assault by employing 2 men continuously working for 14 days. As he himself could not be there in person all the time, he arranged that if they met with any internment, they will set up a signal, as I can see the Barrow from the school window. You know what? You know why it took 14 days, Anne? They were being paid over £1 shilling a day to do the work and have as much beer as they could. It's an ideal job. Why would they even tell him that they found anything? This is 14 days. Unfortunately, this prolonged operation was, like its predecessors, unfruitful. Oh, no bloody wonder. Though the gallant pair opened a yard-wide cutting down to ground level to the centre of the massive tumulus. Once, when opening a cairn, Carrington found an extended skeleton somewhere else, which seemed of recent date. And the greatest thing is, right, by the way, Elise, right, and Monsoir and everybody else online, we're going to have a little break in a couple of minutes, 5 minutes, so get ready for it. Anne, you're going to love this story. Are you ready for this story, Anne?
Yes.
Right? You can imagine they're working on a mound like this, right? And Carrington finds a body which is extended, which is flexed, right? Not crouched, flexed.
Yeah.
And he thinks it's a bit too fresh because there's a little bit of air on it, right? And so basically he inquires in the village. and two old people in the neighborhood informed him that the burial was that of a suicide, one Francis Brown. That's not the end of the story. Who had hanged himself. However, it appears that Brown had been wrongly suspected of taking his own life. And that's why he was not on consecrated ground. That's why he was buried there in the mound. He was buried there in the mound because he couldn't be buried on consecrated ground because he had hung himself, right? But
Oh.
as years later, two criminals had confessed just before their execution at York that they themselves had robbed and murdered the unfortunate man. So this poor, can I just say this in context, Dan? This poor bastard, right? He's buried in a mound in unconsecrated ground because people think he's hung himself when in fact he was murdered.
Oh.
And he was thankfully
I,
found.
I thought it was a bit strange to see him in that position because you know, I mean, I don't know how many Bronze Age burials you've seen, but I know a lot of them were cremated in urns.
Right. Now, this is the interesting thing. In the Bronze Age, what we've got, now this is, if I can give you a rule of thumb on this, Anne, before we have a little bit of a break, right? And we've got a little bit more of this to do, but not too much. And we've got two little items. One I couldn't finish yesterday, so that's where we'll end today. So we've got about another 20 odd minutes, 25 minutes to go, and we'll have 5 minutes, a little break, quick break, I think. Now, what was I going to say? Right, basically, in the way we look at burials is of this, right? In Ireland, in backwards Ireland, sometime around 11,000 years ago, the people in Ireland were so backwards that they were so advanced they managed to cremate human remains. So in other words, what I'm saying is the Irish are some of the first people that I know of are actually cremating human remains. They knew the temperature needed to cremate a human body, which is highly advanced. Put my hat off to the Irish. They bloody well knew what they were doing. So the Irish were cremating their dead, right? Well before anybody else, 11,000 years ago, right? So we've got that from Shannon. I remembered the site at Shannon, right? And by the Shannon River.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the one, darling. That's the one. I knew we'd get our French friend in it afterwards. As soon as I mentioned Ireland, he soon jumps in there. He loves it. And then what we've got, other than that, what we do find in Britain is bodies are either buried in caves or they're buried outside or something. Eventually, what we're finding, other than cremating their dead, we don't see cremations anywhere else in Britain for a while. What happens, darlings, is that we get people in sky burials. So bodies are exposed sometime around 7,000 years ago. Bodies are being exposed, and the long bones and the skulls are then being collected and placed in repositories. The initial repositories are basically the causewayed enclosure sites, which are the string of sausages, which I'll talk about in another lecture in the near distant future. And then what we've got is that we've got, after them collecting long bones and stuff and putting them in and then in barrows, they put them in long barrows. And then what we do is we have bodies arranged like this, long bones arranged like this with a skull, or maybe, these bodies, crouch burials placed like this. And now somewhere along the line, it's a bit mixed, because at this same time they're cremating. In the Bronze Age, they're cremating. So sometimes you get cremation, sometimes you get burials like this, or sometimes you get all two, right? And then in the Bronze Age, as the Bronze Age comes on, you get primarily cremations. And then in the Iron Age, you get normal burials like this again. And in the Roman period, it gets even more complicated. It's cremation, and then by about the 300s, they're doing inhumation burials, which are actually flexed rather than crouched.
Yeah.
Oh, and then the bloody Anglo-Saxons come over and they start cremating people again, silly sods.
Well, it's to do with Christianity, isn't it? When the Romans became Christian, they started burial. But
Exactly.
Like the Anglo-Saxons, they weren't Christian when they came over. They became Christian, didn't they? Later.
Yes, but initially it was sort of all the religions, Mithraism, and all the rest of it. Christianity was originally a cult, but they didn't cremate their dead, did they? They had them, sort of flexed. So
yeah.
So what we're going to do now, and we it's been all about you in this lecture. I'll talk to Adam after the break. A very, very quick break, folks. So don't go away. And anyone online, there's some fascinating things online. Folk used to picnic in cemeteries at older times. There are photos online even. Yeah, well, I've done that. Mind you, I've had a romantic picnic in the cemetery, and I'm not telling you what happened next, Anne.
Then there were
So
2.
what?
Then there were 3 babies.
No, there was only 2. All right, Anne, stop it. We're gonna have a break.
All right.
I won't be long.
All right.
A partridge in a pear tree. On the first day of Christmas, what you said to me, 4 college birds, 3 college birds, 2 friends and and a partridge in a pear tree. La 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 la. Where the hell are they all going? Bloody hell in there! You know, bloody turkeys in you. Baldrick, go to sleep. Baldrick, I'm telling you now, don't make any noises.
Well, we ought to talk, in case he's I hope he's turned his oh God.
I don't think he has.
Hello.
Should I give a good old suck of something?
No. I thought.
Sorry, hang on. We've got to get everybody on the screen because handsome Adam, we've got to see him. Adam, apparently Adam is known as the Che Guevara of the South Country. Yes. South Coast. He's known as the Che Guevara of the South Coast. That's Adam.
Oh.
Chat box here. They put I gotta be honest with you, one of the most embarrassing things was this morning when
Peter.
With Peter showing us his thingamajig. What? The thing is, right, he leant over and you could see his dangler, right, and it was like under his shirt, and I'm just thinking, why? I don't want to see that.
Oh, I didn't notice. I can't see anything because I got this.
Ruth had a right shock. Anyway, somebody's put a message on here. It says, right, hang on a minute. Am I supposed to read this out? Hang on a minute. It says, "Hi, I have heard of these bones being found. Alice Roberts, maybe. Oh, not Alice Roberts. Look,
Alice Roberts.
The pink-headed freak. We don't talk about her.
Leather trousers.
Oh, shut up about leather. Oh God, it's turning me on.
I wonder if they made it a bit smaller.
What smaller? What?
Oh, the picture. It's just.
I thought you were talking about. I thought you were talking about Peter's thingamajig this morning.
Why is it? It's just not there.
It's a broadband.
I know. I need to get the what is it? Those things with
the doodah. Yeah, the thingamajig. Yeah, the doodah.
Yeah, that's
I
it.
need to bring it closer to me.
That's the one. We'll have to do it, Anne. It's great. It's great.
I did actually move it.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm
not
fully
close enough.
I agree.
You
I've
need
got
to
to
get
sit on top of it virtually.
Yeah. And do you want a can of cider?
And I'm paying £40 for it a month.
You've been done.
I know.
That's my money back.
£40.
You can buy a signal booster.
Yeah. Where'd you get them?
Amazon.
Currys or Amazon.
Yeah,
Oh, right. Oh, I might
About
do
50
that. Yeah,
quid.
I should do. Yeah, what I think.
Hey, guys,
Just
guys,
plug it in. Plug it in.
guys, can you remember Roger? Well, Roger might be coming to my Wednesday classes, right? And that's gonna be even better. I tell you what,
Oh,
the
I-
comedy.
I'll just disappear
No, Anne. The only reason
altogether.
And the only reason why Goff does these classes is because of you.
Oh, don't be daft.
It's true.
He does it because of you.
No, is it? I gotta be honest with you on behalf of Goff, because he's never said it, right? Both of us are challenging ourselves to ask you out on a sordid date at the Landau dogging spot. Right.
Oh, Carl,
Hey,
you are awful.
there is one thing. Hey, I'm gonna have a word with you, Goff. You know that car place in Landau, which name we shall not mention.
Yeah.
Is it a front for a dogging spot?
Well, I know there's a bit of dogging going on there, Landau. You're absolutely right.
Oh, no more said.
I didn't know, but
Oh.
we went on holiday to the most famous dogging site in the Cotswolds. Birdlip. Have anyone heard of it?
Yeah.
No,
but-
I have now.
yeah.
Yeah, we've all heard of it now.
It's right
Hey.
by where they found that bronze Iron Age woman, you know.
Oh, the birdlip mirror.
Yeah.
Did
right by there.
you notice as soon as you mentioned the dogging spot there, Adam wrote it down. Do you know what? I had a postcard of Adam in the week. He said, "Can I loan your car for a week?" I now know why. He's going to use his car. My number's going to be on the police buddy database, and I'm
Oh.
going to be the one going dogging.
Oh
Right,
God,
so-
don't be.
Remember Ron Davis? Carl?
Oh, I
first
was
minister.
friends with Ron Davis.
The first minute he was dogging in Bristol.
Hang on, wasn't it Haywards Heath in London?
No, he was in Bristol, wasn't it?
No, Hampstead Heath.
That's the one. And that's the same difference. I knew there was a Hampstead Heath. It was.
Was
Yeah.
it? Bird watching, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was bird watching. Yeah,
With his trousers down.
with his trousers down. Well, he wanted to get his woodpecker out, didn't he? His pecker.
Oh God! Change the subject.
Oh, hey, watch.
But anyway, well, we got to crack on. The only reason why Richard does this is because of the entertaining value. Can you imagine Anne, Roger, and Dell in this class?
Dell.
Adam's going back to the other one. He's had enough.
Oh,
Do you know? Right, okay, carry on. Right, there we go. Oh, the world owes us a living. La-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da. Oh, by the way, I got to remind you, the next time that we do Barrow Diggers in a couple of weeks, right, we'll be looking at the topic of, wait for it, diggers or desecrators, which they were basically known in the Victorian period as. We got
Yeah.
two other bits to do, but before we do those two other bits, what we've got to do, we've got to get straight back down to our undies, right? And look how good these plans are. They're great. Carrington. Oh, this one itself is another skillful woodcut in Bateman's work. Another skillful woodcut by Llewellyn Hewitt, showing one of Bateman Cairns' plans. Though the straight cut sections and the perfectly preserved skeletons should be treated with some suspicion, the youthful burial in the kist at the top, however, was in good enough condition to be rearticulated in place in a glass case. Now, I've got a bone to pick with the person who made that caption, right? And if that set of human remains is perfect, why can't the rest be perfect? And why can't this plan be right? Do you see what I'm trying to get at? So,
No.
you know, I do, Anne. Shut up. Carrington. This was the Monsdale, the Monsdale Barrow. Say that quick. Carrington was always loath to leave any partly revealed burials overnight for fear of interference to them by casual curial hunters. It's not the same interference I get when I'm with women, when you say you've been interfering with me, right? This is another different interference, and it's nothing to do with interference on your broadband, okay? So don't even go there.
Oh,
He
it's
mentioned
very
helping.
neat. Very neat.
There's nothing wrong with it being neat.
No, no. There's nothing wrong
Exactly.
with being neat.
Thank you. He mentioned helping James Ruddock on certain diggings near Pickering in 1848. The pair left a kist and the cremation it contained overnight, intending to excavate it in fully the following morning. Although they were there on site by 4 a.m. on the dot, they found that the kist had already been rifled. So in other words, they could not leave these burials left overnight because some banana will go in there and nick it all. When late one there's a song here. When late one evening, Carrington found an undisturbed chamber in the Neolithic round Carlet Long Low. He sent a hastily scribbled note to Bateman, written late at night, stating that he intended to open it as soon as light in the morning to prevent mischief. Carrington appears to have been a most conscientious and worthy servant of Bateman. He had a deep interest in archaeology and proved a scrupulous and enthusiastic antiquary. More than once, he apologized in his letters to Bateman, but he was nevertheless a first-rate Barrow digger. He once compared himself as but the fly that sat on the chariot alongside Bateman, but Carrington was a good digger nevertheless. And if it wasn't for Carrington, lots of the work of Bateman, he wouldn't have had it. As a slight acknowledgement of the assistance derived from his indefatigable zeal in the pursuit of science by his sincere friend Thomas Bateman, Carrington had a recognition of his own in Bateman's work. Later articles in Reliquary and the notes of Jewett's diary, the one who did lots of the work for Bateman, the woodcuts, the artwork, show that Carrington continued to interest himself in archaeology for many years after Bateman's death. Because Bateman died in 1861, Carrington died in 1870.
Oh.
Now, this James Ruddock was a bit of a charlatan. We mentioned James Ruddock a little while ago when Carrington was working in Staffordshire. James Ruddock was the proxy digger for Bateman in North Yorkshire. Details of how he came to be employed appear in Bateman's correspondence with Sheffield Museum. In the note in Diggins announcing Ruddock's death, Bateman wrote that the former was for many years singularly imbued with an enthusiasm for antiquarian pursuits. However, Ruddock wasn't as good as Bateman made out. Now, Ruddock, wonderful Ruddock, and I don't, hopefully there's a few people still online. Ruddock was apparently a much more rough and ready digger than Carrington in his North Yorkshire. And his reports were more than scanty. In other words, he would excavate a mound, wouldn't find anything, and he wouldn't even write to Bateman. There was a sense of inaccuracy in Ruddock's work. However, whenever Bateman had reports from him, they were okay. Although Bateman and Carrington occasionally failed to locate their own sites with precision, Ruddock's own locating was casual to the point of non-existence. So basically, Annie would say, "Oh, I dug on that burial mound over there. You know the bit, Anne, over by the tree? You know the one? What tree? You know, that one over there." Yeah. This was basically what he was writing in letters to Bateman, and Bateman had no ideas where this stuff was going on. Ruddock would basically say, "Oh, I dug a mound. It was about 6 miles north of Pickering," that type of thing, right? Or it was near that landmark, the thing with the hedge, and the hedge would be cut down. So unfortunately, Ruddock, on his death in 1848, his notes were relatively incomplete. And for Bateman, wherever Ruddock was digging was very, very vague indeed. Ruddock, it said in Bateman's notes, dug 100 barrows. Well, that seems a lot anyway. But other people reckon that he dug 300 barrows and only told Bateman of 100 of them and not all 300. Which and the reason why that is he was illegally digging on the estates of the Reverend John Christopher Atkinson of Danby of Estdale Moor. Ruddock told the curious that he had permission to excavate from the guardians of the law of Danby Manor. A doubting employee of the estate informed Atkinson of his suspicions, Reverend Atkinson. Atkinson set inquiries in motion and found out the entire falsehood of the statements made. So in other words, Ruddock was illegally digging on land and wouldn't really tell Bateman, right? And this is the thing. Ruddock was a real cowboy. It said that it said in this note, however, by this time the mounds had been rifled and the contents sent on to Bateman. So in other words, Ruddock would just find things, put them in a box if he felt like, and send it to Bateman and said, I found them over there, right? You know, over there, I found them over there. So the problem is, unless you tell people where exactly your finds are coming from, the archaeology is completely pointless. This is when I have big arguments with, well, I don't have arguments with metal detector enthusiasts anymore because I just keep out of it. But I one day did some work with the National Museum of Wales, and they basically said, right, you've got to monitor what these metal detector enthusiasts are doing. So, right. So when I was ordered by another authority to tell them to leave, right, I said to them, can you tell me where all your finds have come from? And they said, oh, they've all come from this field. They've come from here and there and whatever, right? It only turned out that they had been metal detecting on other people's land without permission and claiming that they had come from this field that they had vague permission to be on. So in other words, some of the stuff that they were finding, we have no idea where it originated from, which is a big shame. Bateman's death came suddenly late in August 1861. In the 40th year of his life, he was only ill a short time and appeared to be on the mend when he had a relapse of an earlier illness, and he just suddenly died. At his death, he had personally opened 200 tumuli. Carrington dug into a further 100. So the work between Carrington and Bateman was around 300 mounds across Derbyshire and Staffordshire. Bateman's character was touched upon by Jewett in a memorial notice in Reliquary. If we siphon off the thickly spread adulations and overdone Victorian sentiment from the account, we gather that Bateman was a man of strict discipline and principle, of a shy disposition, cold and lacking of geniality, perfect for an archaeologist, to those who did not know him, but a generous and kind disposition to friends who knew him. He had a singular fondness for everything related to the past and particularly to the dead. Nothing could be more interesting to him than researches and inquiries connected with the tomb. So there are criticisms about Bateman, things he got right, things he got wrong, but some of the things he got right was up to his death, getting his stuff published and getting Jewett to make these wonderful, that's obviously one of Bateman's, making these wonderful plans, and from Bateman's notes, you know, wonderful sort of, Bateman would leave these little lead plaques in places he had dug. So you could, so if you can't exactly work out where Bateman's work was, you could basically find one of these plaques, nail his work, and obviously link in with the archaeology that he's discussed with that site. So that was great. So it's of some help. So you could use a metal detector enthusiast to find the lead plaque, to find the site, to work out where he was exactly digging. Job done, Bob's your uncle. 9 of these have been found in amongst 200 barrows that are out there, but only a few of the barrows of Bateman have actually been since excavated. He could, on one occasion, exhibit rather a sense of obsession with the archaeology, and then he had a very interesting, colourful character. He met lots of the very interesting people of the day, including Godfrey Fawcett, who was the grandson of Brian Fawcett, who was one of those early Barrow diggers. They all seem to get on well, and they all seem to spread their notes and stuff. But usually the people up north didn't mix with the people down south. But when they did get together, they had a sense of connection because they were really interested in their history and archaeology. So that's Bateman done for today. That's the Barrow Diggers part 6 or 7 or whatever it is done today. Obviously, these beautiful illustrations again, we've discussed that, and obviously getting an idea of a section of Ballingdon Moor, these multiple burials. That's looking side on. I had a question, how are you looking at that? That's looking side on. That's looking as a cross section rather than down as an aerial view. That's looking side on, right? As we would say, fisheye view, isn't it? Sort of looking side on. And obviously, all the finds that we know about of Bateman did end up in various museums, so none of them were lost, which is a good thing. And they're all labelled. They were labelled. There was labels on them. Love these plans, and obviously, the place where Bateman was buried. Next time we do Barrow Diggers, we're going to be looking at the unexpected consequences of opening a barrow. And if you can get the William Pertwee's Doctor Who episode of Hob Hill, where they've got an episode where there's an archaeologist digging into a mound and the devil comes out. That's a good one. That'll be very much to do with what we're doing next time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do this. This was mentioned in a Digging for Britain prehistoric episode, and this was published in the on the BBC News on the 5th of February 2023. As of this moment, anything from the BBC will be banned because I'm boycotting the BBC. But that's my own thing. But for now, this is a BBC piece. That there, look how deep these are there. Massively deep trenches, right, for these buildings, right? And there's Alice Roberts. She's not in her leathers goth, and she's not on a bike, so don't get too excited.
Oh, she's all sophisticated now.
Yeah. Because she went to Cardiff University, I don't like her much. Archaeologists uncovered evidence of 2 large rectangular dwellings dating back to 5,800 years ago and 1 second during a 2021 dig at Cluny Road, Londonderry. The discovery of a Neolithic era settlement is helping shed light on how people lived on the shores of Loch Foyle, some over 5,800 years ago. Archaeologists uncovered evidence of 2 large rectangular houses dating back to around 5,800 years during a dig at Cluny Road, 2021. But we're only sort of really getting into this now because we've looked at the results. Neolithic tools, a statue of Lloyd George, pottery and cooking utensils have been unearthed. Experts say that dwellings like those found in Derry have rarely been excavated before. Well, I would disagree. They're coming across loads in County Londonderry and Ireland, aren't they? But obviously one of the first found in Derry. How many of these Neolithic buildings did the Irish have to find to sort of lord it over us? That we don't. The Irish seem to find all these buildings.
No,
Like,
I mean that's Northern Ireland. There's a different part of the Ireland.
I don't care. It's one blooming island. It's one island. End of story. It's found in Ireland. All this Protestant Catholic nonsense.
No, it's nothing to do with that. It's northern. It's northern. You don't realise how north it is. It's north. It's as north as Scotland.
I don't care. It's in Ireland.
The south, Southern Ireland, is as south as South Wales.
None of us care. Right.
It's cold. It's cold up there. They would have had to have had houses.
Oh, what? All right, then. So what do you think? The people in the south lived on bloody beaches because it was warmer?
Actually, they did.
Oh, snap you.
All right.
They
Sorry.
did. You've got the
I'll shut up.
you got the developments in Galway in the bays.
So they're all living on bloody deck chairs and stuff in the south, are they?
They were on their paddle boards.
Yeah.
Might have something to do with the Gulf Stream, you think?
Yep.
And they're on, yeah, oh, and you're right.
Can I just bring some sense to this lecture, right? One, they didn't have bloody deck chairs 6,000 years ago, and there's no evidence of it, right? And they lived in houses.
They had to return them because they had to leave a deposit.
Oh, you'll be leaving a bloody deposit on your backside in a minute.
Ooh.
Oh, I don't even know what that meant. We'll take, well, whatever. The finds featured in the latest series of BBC Two Digging for Britain. Rectangular homes from the period are seldom found outside Scotland and the whole of Ireland.
Oh,
Around
that's
Loch
it.
Foyle, shut up, and the
Scotland.
south. Yeah, around Loch Foyle specifically, there are quite a few. It has a high density of settlement dated to the early Neolithic. That shows around Loch Foyle, there are lots and lots of Neolithic people living. And they're all called, oh, I don't know.
Never mind.
What?
Never mind.
Yeah, exactly. And they've all got red hair. Flipping out. Archaeologists seldom have an opportunity to excavate these types of houses in Derry, Ireland. They were a short-lived phenomenon. Apparently, these buildings were only used for between 30 and 50 years, which is really, really odd. And what's interesting, there's their division within these buildings. They have really deep foundation trenches of very, very deep oak trees. There you go, oak trees as foundations, right? You attach anything onto an oak tree as a foundation, it's going to last forever, right? It had a high peaked roof. Circular dwellings then seem to come after these, but in the Neolithic at this stage, they were mainly rectangular buildings. These people took advantage of the rich landscape that is Ireland before large tracts of it were taken over by peat bogs and the IRA. The Derry settlement, where it is located and the way it is constructed, is evidence of the shift to a more settled way of life. When we were digging it out, you could see how amazing it would have looked, how deep the foundations were. The soil is good there, and they are in a substantial place. With Loch Foyle as a resource, it would have been a beautiful, there would have been a beautiful wooded area as well. They would have been using that great landscape as well. The tools and utensils found are also evidence of the advances being made in Neolithic Ireland.
Yeah.
A united Ireland. I'm going to upset everybody now. Well, it was one island before, wasn't it? It's just there's nothing to do with North and South, Catholic, Protestants, and all that religious rubbish. Oh, by the way, there's somebody from the IRA outside now. They planted a bomb under you. The team from Northern Archaeological Consultancy, who were called in ahead of construction of a modern-day housing development, found serrated tools used to strip back, unique to Ireland. Again, the Irish have got another one. Known as a plano-convex knife. In other words, they had Swiss Army knives given to them by Otzi the Iceman.
Yeah.
Mrs. McMonagle, that's a good Irish name, isn't it? McMonagle. She had blonde hair, not red. Little bit of everything, like a Swiss Army knife. Knives like this were used much earlier on the island of Ireland than anywhere else on the planet, even before the Swiss. So the Swiss copied the Swiss Army knife design from the Irish. A grinding stone was found showing the inhabitants knew how to work grain, how to cultivate the land they inhabited. It is not the first time evidence of the Neolithic period settlement has been uncovered on the banks of the River Foyle, on the banks of the Pyle. Top of the world, Tisha. I think I've lost the plot. A 6,000-year-old village was unearthed during an excavation ahead of Thorne College's new school at Colmore area of Derry. 6,000-year-old axe heads, arrowheads and pottery were among the artifacts uncovered from a site with which archaeologists said could have been home to about 51.5 of Ireland's earliest farmers. So there we go. Brilliant site. We're loving it. We're loving it. Yeah, okay. And Goff is loving Alice Roberts, and
Listen,
Adam,
call me. No, no,
she's
no.
available for you.
No, I don't like her. No,
You don't like Alice Roberts?
no, one can't stand her.
I can't stand her either. Correct.
No,
We love Bethany Hughes, don't we?
Yeah, much better.
Oh, I tell you what, Bethany Hughes with that black hair and protrusions, we love them.
She's a flirt.
Yeah.
She's a flirt.
Shut up, you. Post-excavation work is now ongoing, and obviously the evidence will be displayed to the public in the nearby future. And there is a bit of the pottery from the Neolithic period. Has she got, how many rings has she got on her fingers there? She's been married 500 times, probably. Anyway, we're loving it. Look at those deep trenches. And you wouldn't wander across their piss. And one thing that they mentioned, shut up. One innovation is the fact that you've got a division inside the building. Having divisions inside buildings is great. And obviously all the post holes indicate other work and pits and all the rest of it. And what else would you like to say before we go on to the next bit and we nearly call it a day?
No, I think it is interesting to see Neolithic in the north, the north of Ireland, because I only heard of Iron Age on the coast, of Northern Ireland, on the east coast of Northern Ireland so far.
And can I just make a comment, right? The rest of us who don't really who don't care about Ireland, don't really care where things are in the north or the south. It's just found in Ireland. Good.
Well, my mother's from the north.
Oh, by the way, viewers, I do really love Ireland. I'm just trying to get a rise out of one of you. Right. Okay. So what we're going to do, right? I tell you what, we definitely had a rise out of Peter this morning. That was disgusting, Anne.
I said to him that he was smiling. I said, "What are you smiling at, Peter? I thought you made a mistake." And you said he just passed wind. I didn't know anything else. All right.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay. Finally, I don't know. There's some people online still. I don't know what they think about this. I don't know who's still there, but whoever's online, put a message on there. And don't forget to like and subscribe, you swabs. Right. Okay. Finally, what I'm going to do, we're going to do a bit of this. We're going to do a bit of this next week, actually. It's a very early Bronze Age site on Dartmoor, right? It's called White Horse Hill. It's a kist on White Horse Hill, right? And this kist, as revealed on White Horse Hill during a 2011 excavation. The reason why I'm doing it now is because I was asked to do it by bearded Peter in the Barry class, the other Peter. Not the Barry class, the Tuesday evening class. The side stones are in varying states of collapse, but they actually found this. Lots of the cairns on Dartmoor were thought to have dug, right? But this itself was actually dug and the contents were intact. And look at that. You'll never guess what that is. That's Anne's last meal. No, that is actually the cremated bone and bearskin pelt from the White Horse Hill kist, as revealed from the excavations. Look at the pelt itself of the brown bits and the white bits of the cremated bits, right? And you know what? There's loads of other little bones in there. Can you see all the little bones?
Yeah,
I wonder if those little bones are rodent bones.
it could be.
They look like rodent bones to me. Right, Adam, that's your research until next week. I know you've got nothing to do all week. Right, okay, what we're going to do, we're going to introduce this, right? Scores of prehistoric kists on Dartmoor were opened by antiquarian investigators in the 1800s. On occasion, their curiosity was rewarded with a flint tool, or, if they were very lucky, a pot. Not the type of pot that you smoke, Richard, right? A pot as in a ceramic thingamajig, right? More often than not, their endeavors were met with an empty cavity, right? Nothing to do with teeth, Anne. When an eroding kist exposed on White Horse Hill was excavated in 2011, it was assumed that the contents would be equally unremarkable. Instead, the exceptional burial is shining new light on early Bronze Age Dartmoor. Today, we're just going to do this last paragraph and then we're going to call it day because Goth should have gone to bed 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Or he's got to go to the pub. I don't know, one or the other. Today, the White Horse Hill kist site could easily be mistaken for a barrow from a distance. Not a wheelbarrow, but a barrow as in a mound. The ground that held this burial for almost 3,000 years stands proud of the surrounding hilltop and rises to form an appreciable mound. It was not always so. In the 1800s, labourers stripped away the peat that blanketed the hill for fuel, leaving only a few isolated stacks or hags. Not those types of hags, okay? Not women, hags, as in mounds, as they are known, standing in their wake. It was the decision to spare one such stack near the summit of the hill that preserved the highest kist burial currently known on Dartmoor. Whether the modern prominence of the hag is entirely an artifact of the peat cutter's handiwork is impossible to say, as they may have simply exaggerated this natural hummock. Oh, why did I just say hillock? As it stands, the White Horse Hill kist certainly forms a natural counterpart to the nearby Hanging Stone Barrow, with the two burials bookending the windswept ridge that connects them. On that note, we're going to call it a day, and we'll do more about this site next week. But look at the images, and look at that there. Oh my God, the preservation of stuff. A studded cattle hair bracelet, shown in situ. So basically, cattle bones made from hair. No, hair is in hair on the head, not hair as in animals. And then you've got these as well. We'll look at these. These are shut up, Anne. These are wooden studs found in the kist. And these would have been set within body piercings and are the earliest objects known to have been manufactured by being turned on a lathe in Britain. On that note, and the people online, apparently Elise is still online. Elise is one of my biggest fans online. She is Elise, right? And Monsoir is still up there, and Gran88 is still up there. So what we're going to do more of this next week, right? What we're going to do now is ask any questions, and any questions from anyone online as well, and we will read them out. Stop the share. No, not as, you know, yeah. Have anyone ever heard Cher playing on the radio recently? I don't know. Right. Cher, you know, Sonny and Cher.
Oh, yeah.
La 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 la, you don't know. La 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 la, that one. Yeah. Adam knows it well. It's his favorite song. Right. Anne, anything you want to say?
Well,
That'll do.
It's been a lot of information to take in.
Right. And can I ask you a question? Right. Do I put my custard in the bowl before I put the apricots, or do I put the apricots in first and then the custard on top? Because in Devon, they would put the custard in first and then the apricots on top, but in Cornwall, they'd put the apricots first and then the custard on top.
Is it warm or cold custard?
It's going to be warm. It's going to be warm custard.
Oh, I think I'd put them on top. I'd put the apricots in the bottom and the custard on top.
But if the custard was cold, you put the apricots on the top.
They'll warm the apricots up then, you know, and you'll be good.
Well, that's fair enough. Right, anyway. Right, anything else you want to say, Anne?
No, thank you. That was very more people, you know, to write in my book.
What? Oh, hang on, you haven't got what? Hang on, Anne, you haven't got one of those books that if the Germans finally invade Britain, you're going to give them the book and we're all going to be executed.
No.
Oh, that's good.
You know, you said about Low. That was just a place. That was just a place, was it, or was it a person?
Oh no, there's loads of Lows in Derbyshire.
Oh, was there?
Arbelow's the big famous one where there's a Neolithic Dudar effort there, and it's a henge monument. So Arbellow.
Oh, you didn't say there was an archaeologist called someone low.
No.
Oh, all right then.
Right. Anyway, that's
I'm
you done, Anne. Right.
disappointed now.
Okay. What we're going to do, we're going to hear from our French friend from Ireland, Henry.
I was going to throw you another one from Ireland. In February, they've discovered the largest prehistoric settlement in County Down
Right.
Oh,
Can you,
yes.
Mike?
under a famine pit.
Oh, yes.
Did you say
No,
that?
I knew they found the famine pit. I didn't know there was a settlement underneath it. Oh.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, if I'm right, Goff is really upset that you've found more. So I tell you, can you send that as a link to me, please, Henri?
Right. Okay. I'll
Good.
send you across.
Good. And by the way, all those that believe that the present phenomenon of global warming is actually a natural phenomenon will actually burn in hell alongside me. Like, I'm talking about burning in hell
Well,
because you
I think there's just too many satellites going around disturbing the atmosphere.
You need one over your house, Sam.
Yeah. Come on then. Come on. Who's he asking?
Right, Adam. Anything you want to tell us, Adam?
No, thanks, Carl. That's very good. Great stuff. I look forward to next week as well.
There's a woman online asking if she can have your number to go on a date. So, that's good.
That's always nice.
That's always nice. Right, I'll give her Richard's. Richard will end up having a divorce. Right,
Oh, is that a
Richard.
dating site here?
Yeah, I know it is. Richard, anything you want to say?
No, really interesting subject.
Good. And Elise on there said, indeed, thoroughly enjoy your content. She said she's going to sign into the Barry class with everything that goes on that on the Wednesday morning at 11. Right, Goff. Anything you want to say, Goff?
I didn't realise there's so much going on in Ireland. So that's quite enlightening. So yeah, that's you sort of forget about it, don't you, Ireland?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, best done really, because you
There's not
might
much
get.
to do in
yeah,
Ireland.
I'm sure there's a lot going on in archaeological wise on the Isle of Man, but you don't seem to hear much about that, do you? Certainly, you haven't dealt with anything on the Isle of Man.
I have occasionally, but not in this period. And apparently, we've got one person on our Tuesday evening class who's going to the Isle of Man this week. And what I've said to her, if she's going to go to the Isle of Man, she needs to look at all the Viking museums on the Isle of Man, and go to every single church graveyard in the Isle of Man, because there's carved Viking stones.
Oh, that would maybe we can deal with. You can knock one up sometime. Lecture.
Well, there's lots of women we can knock up, but we'll have to.
Talking about it.
Well, my cousin went out with a guy from the Isle of Man.
Oh, really?
From Yards Peninsula.
Did he have a washing machine?
You know this Welsh art. And I thought it was he was from the north of Wales. My daughter said he's from Cardiff. He's from Cardiff. This is what it's all about. Cardiff. It's silly.
Yeah. I'm with it, Anne. I'm with it. Right. Oh my God. I can't. I need drugs after this. I really do. I need to get some diazepam. I really do. Right. Okay. I just want to tell you, next week we're going to be doing Otzi the Iceman, and
Again.
we didn't finish him last time.
Oh.
I had loads of abuse about that lecture. Why'd you talk about the buffering thing? I tell you what, these classes are not politically appropriate, are they? Oh, God. So we got to do the rest of obviously the Iceman next week. Probably a bit of Ireland, probably a bit of something else, right? And entertainment. That'll be good. Right. Okay, then I think that's everything done now for this week. So what I'm going to do, if nobody else wants to say anything else, I'm going to say goodbye to Goff, Richard, Adam, Anne, and French Henry, and we will see you all next week. Take care, folks.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye.
To Mussolini for me, Adam. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care. Oh, my God. My head's done in. It really, really is, Henry. I don't know how I managed to do this each week. Can you imagine if Del was here this week, Henry? Can you imagine if blimmin' Roger was here as well? It would be like a blimmin' freak show.
I'm going to go and lie down for a while.
Do you know, I think we should lie down before these classes because it's a bit too much of a thought. Anne was definitely on top form today.
I think you need to sort her broadband out.
I'm not going to sort anything out, flipping heck. I'm not sorting her out, flipping heck.
Right, have a good evening and enjoy your custard.
Do you know what I might do? Is I might try the custard in the bowl with the fruit on top.
Have 2 bowls, try it 2 different ways.
Oh, that's too logical. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. Do you always drain your juice off the apricot halves before? I usually drink the juice before I put it in a bowl.
I normally put the whole lot in.
Yeah, well, you bloody would, wouldn't you? That's what they do in Ireland.
I'll leave you.
Well, yeah, no, that'll be fine. I will see you. I will see you next Wednesday.
Right, we'll send you some tablets in the meantime.
Oh yes, please. Can you diazepam double strength, please? Cocodamol as well for the pain. It's got to be done.
Have a good week.
You have a good week. Thanks for joining us, Henry. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. And anyone who's still watching online, don't forget to like and subscribe. Anyone, there's a join button down at the bottom, the blue button. If you want to join, right, it's £1.99 a month. Every single penny helps the cause of keeping me alive. Maybe I can get some hair gel. Look at the state of my hair today after that lecture. Right. So if anyone's still watching now, I'd like to say goodbye to Elise and Gran88 and Monsoir and whoever else is watching. Usually what we get is one watcher in the corner and there's like 5 or 6 other people watching. Whilst if anyone's thinking of any other questions, I'm going to I know you thoroughly enjoy my content, Elise. I think it's called Elise, isn't it? So what we're going to do, we're going to go in the chat box. We've got, hi, I have heard of these bones being found. A Roberts maybe. What the hell does that mean? What the hell? Right, in the chat box here in front of me on the screen that you don't get to see. Hi, I have heard of these bones being found. Alice Roberts maybe. I have heard of these bones being found. Alice Roberts maybe. I've no idea what that means. It's there. And we've got more people who've just joined us. Right. So what I'm going to do is we've had a really nice discussion about the Neolithic today and a few other things. And we've done some Roman stuff as well, which is really strange. We'll be doing this lecture next week and it's roughly about 7:15. So if you sign in at 7:20, it's on my karl-james lamp channel. We do this on a Tuesday evening as well at about 7:35, 7:40 when we sign in. We do another one at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday morning. And anyone's welcome to actually join these actually online. So what we're going to do is if you want to go to my website, which is this, and you want to sign up and actually take part as one of my students online each week. So instead of being sort of in the background, if you go to my website, you can, there you go. If you want to go to my website, you can join us online, which would be really, really good. And so, oh, there I am again. Hey, why is 4 people joining us now? Anyway, so we've just come to the end of the lecture, but you know, the Neolithic period is absolutely fascinating. There's so much to say about the Neolithic period. massively so much to say about the Neolithic period as opposed to the Mesolithic period. And it's just like, you know, each week we get something new, and it takes me away from what I'm supposed to be doing. But then that's how I teach. It's all about bringing stuff that people have got to say. So anyway, I'm going to finish now. Anyone who wants to join us online, you can make a donation on my website as well if you want, and obviously join the blue button down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'm going to go now. If nobody else wants to say anything else, you've got a few seconds to say something else on the feed, and then I've got to go. So I'm going to go back to this mystery of what this says. Hi, I have heard of these bones being found. A. Roberts, maybe. Still don't know what that means. Anyway, I've got to go. Take care. Many, many thanks. And thank you for joining us. Really, really appreciate this. Anyway, my OCD is going to click in because I'm going to start repeating myself. Take care. Bye. Thanks for your support, everybody. Elise, Gran, and Monsoir, and whoever. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.